In relationship, do you ever feel like all of a sudden you notice, God, my partner's acting really weird? Like maybe they're even getting a little kind of childish or clingy in a certain way, or maybe they just tend to like totally avoid you or walk out of the room without saying anything when you get into an argument or when they feel stressed. Well, you're not alone. You might actually be unknowingly walking into an attachment situation with your partner. That's what we're going to talk about in this video. Hey, I'm Leslie Huddart. I am a licensed acupuncturist and spiritual guide, and I help empaths, healers, and highly sensitive people really release the trauma trapped in their body and get the tools that you need on all levels to really live the life that's calling you. And recently on a healing call with a client, she said, it's really weird. All of a sudden, my partner just started kind of really being kind of clingy and weird, and I don't even know what's happening when that's going on. Well, something I'd like to give you a crash course in is something called attachment theory. And this is coming from the world of psychological and social researchers, great researchers like Stan Tatkin. There's a couple books that I will recommend to you down in the comments below. But essentially, we as humans develop sort of an attachment style. This is essentially how we learn to regulate ourselves in relationship to other people when we're feeling a little triggered or off or emotional. And this really comes into play when we are in relationship, because a lot of times our attachment techniques and strategies are not conscious to us. We're not thinking, wow, I'm having an avoidant attachment moment right now. We just have impulses that sometimes we're not able to communicate. I will tell you that this is one of the biggest ahas that I found in my own personal relationship when I learned about attachment styles. So many more things. I could go back into boyfriends of the past and be like, oh, that's why we really didn't do well on that particular thing. And it can be a really key strategy, especially for sensitive people, understanding their own and their partner's attachment style. So let's go over the basics. In general, there are sort of three main categories. You tend to either be in the category of what's called anxiously attached. And if you're an anxiously attached person, when you feel a little triggered or off, or you're wanting to regulate yourself, you tend to gravitate towards connection. You want to be with people. You want to be affirmed. You want to maybe have physical closeness and be reassured in a certain way. Now, granted, we all have elements of this, but it's a little bit of a stronger strategy in this case. And your internal feeling as an anxious attachment person is kind of this feeling like, God, I can never really get all of the connection that I really want from people, and maybe a little bit of a sense of disappointment there. Or you could be, I'm in this category, the more avoidant attachment, where when you feel like you're just not with yourself sort of, and you get stressed out, you want to be by yourself and you really need distance. And so you might have often this sense of, God, I just feel like people want too much from me. And you tend to feel triggered if it feels like there's higher demand for your time. So a more anxious avoidant person feels triggered if it feels like people aren't responding to them and they can't get people to respond. And an avoidant attachment person tends to feel more triggered if it seems like people are always wanting your time and you're just like, God, give me a freaking break. Now, there's also a third style, which tends to be a common combination of the two, where you kind of flip-flop back and forth in between the two. Some researchers say that this has a lot to do with your early family structure. There's a lot of different reasons, but the truth is most of us fall into these categories. Now, there is a spectrum of healthy attachment. We're all going to have a tendency, but just because you're one or the other doesn't really make you pathological or good or bad, but it is very important to have a sense of your strategy. And often the most challenging, and it tends to really happen, that an anxious avoidant person gets in relationship with an avoidant person. Because the tricky part is that when things are not going well, as partners in a relationship, we have a strong effect on each other. When one person gets triggered, their way of coping is actually more triggering to the other person. So there becomes this really strong push-pull. And as I'm talking, you might even be having aha moments of, oh, that's what's happening with us. So in this video, I want to give you a couple of strategies to start to think about this. Number one is feel into which category that you feel like you're in. And it doesn't take too many questions to notice that you probably tend to one side or the other. When you think about, God, when I feel upset, I really just want closeness, hugging. I tend to like ask or reach out for more reassurance or things. Or when I feel upset or like stuff's not going well, I just want to be by myself and just want to be in my own space. Or you might notice that you really swing back and forth in between those. Good to know about yourself, good to know about your partner. Let's talk about one or the other if your partner is the opposite. So if you, for example, this client, when she was giving me the example of like, yeah, I was just getting in the shower and my partner was really asking me a bunch of things. And so I wasn't really sure what was going on. So if you are an avoidant person in your general strategy and you know that you're interacting with someone who tends to be a little bit more anxious, your natural strategy is going to be to get space. But if and when you can and you notice, the steps are one, I notice that it seems like my partner's feeling a little triggered and it seems like they're needing attention. That's how I know that they're probably triggered. So as much as I can, even though I kind of want to like, back away, I take a deep breath. I connect with the energy in my body. We've got lots of subtle body strategies if you've been following me for a while, so you can apply some of those techniques. And as much as I can, I try to give a combination of immediate attention with negotiation. So what this means and why I usually recommend it this way is as much as you can, try to turn towards the avoidant person. And I don't just mean physically, I mean energetically and otherwise, to ask them what's going on. Maybe ask them verbally, hey, what do you need? Or maybe reflect like, oh, is there anything going on? Sounds like you're a little bit upset. And see if you can really help them to get what they need, or ask them, give them the space to really ask for what they're wanting. Whether they say something like, well, I just want to hear that it's okay, or I just want to hear that you love me, or I just wanted to do something together. Attachment styles ultimately are about helping each other really regulate ourselves. We are not really islands in a vacuum. When we're in relationship, especially if you are a sensitive, empathic person, you are affected by your partner's actions and their nervous systems and their vibes. I can tell as soon as we wake up in the morning if Jay hasn't slept well, because he's sort of like giving off these like, oh, frustrated, I didn't sleep so well vibes. And so I have to manage myself, and the more that I can be okay with myself, the more I can extend to another person. So learning attachment styles is another way we do that. We want to stay on our 50%. Other people are in charge of their own lives, but we make these really kind of sacred commitments to help co-regulate together, and understanding attachment is part of that. So avoidant person towards an anxious person is more like some kind of immediate attention, and then negotiate. Maybe you feel like, ooh, I really do need to kind of be by myself, but let me give you some attention, ask you what you need. I also sometimes will recommend to couples that they set a timer. Like, oh, what do you need? And they'll say, oh, I just need a snuggle. Okay, well, let's snuggle for 8 minutes, and then I need a little bit of time to go read a book, and then I'll come back. So negotiation part, because it's important for the avoidant person to not just override all of their senses of what they need to be in the anxious attachment closeness place, because that maybe is a little too much for their nervous system. So you're trying to hit it in between. Let's talk about the other side, where you tend to be a more anxious person and your partner is a little bit more avoidant. In this case, even though when they feel upset, what you want is to be close to people, what they want is not. So we all naturally give to others what we want for ourselves, which is the opposite in this situation. So if you are more anxiously attached and you like closeness, you may have a sense that stuff's off for your partner, and you may tend to go towards them. You may tend to ask questions. Hey, what's up? Are you sure? Are you sure you're okay? Are you sure you're okay? So instead, the strategy for this case is confirm what's happening and give space. Because part of often what we are as sensitive people outlining and reassuring ourselves is, gosh, are you mad at me, or are you just upset, kind of a thing? Are you avoiding me because of me, or just because that's your strategy for what you need right now? So question what's really going on, and then give that person some space, even though you would want something different. So that can look like something like, hey, sounds like something's up with you. Are you just needing some space? And they might say, yeah, I'm just pissed off, or I'm just tired, or that thing happened. Cool. okay, how about if I go something, 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 and maybe we can do something a little bit later and see. So there's still this negotiation in every part, but we're asking different questions depending on what side of the spectrum that we are on. Now, there is a lot to relationship, not just the way our attachment styles are, but the way we regulate our own energetic bodies, the way we communicate with each other is huge. This is why we incorporate subtle body work and energetic communication. If you're interested in that, I'll leave some more links below. You deserve great things, and relationship is a path for personal and spiritual growth. That's my working hypothesis, and I'm glad to be here with you along the way. I will see you next time.